What is up, guys? Alex Scott here with JamPlay.com, and welcome back, I should say, to day 2 of our big holiday extravaganza live event sale thing. Not exactly consecutive days, but thank you guys so much for joining us again. Really, really great to be back. And got all kinds of really, really cool stuff going on. We're going to be giving away actually this exact bass that I'm holding here at the end of my lesson, which is really cool. I'm a huge fan of these. We've got the Squier Vintage Modified Jazz Bass. And I dig these basses so much, I'm actually going to do my whole lesson on it. Just so the winner gets to hear their bass on the big live stream and, gets a good idea for how it sounds and everything. So that's going to be really, really, really cool. Now, what I wanted to do with you guys is actually give you guys the option of sort of choosing what I'm going to talk about over this little bit of lesson that I'm going to do here. I kind of had 2 ideas just kind of based on my own live events and stuff that I do. I was thinking I could either teach you guys a little bit about slap bass. I know it's a very popular topic that everybody wants to know a little bit more about, guitar players included. Not as applicable to guitar, but definitely something cool that we can do. Or I could sort of continue what I did in the last day of live events, which I was talking about some different soloing and phrasing techniques that are applicable to both guitar and bass. So I was going to kind of leave it up to you guys, the viewers out there at home. So go ahead, get in that chat box, and go if you want to hear some slap bass, say so. If you guys want to talk a little bit more about soloing, I could talk a little bit more about some simple music theory concepts that you guys can use to improve your soloing and lead playing and melody writing and all that kind of stuff. So we'll give you guys a few minutes to sort of to chat in, and whichever's seeming like the more popular option. I will go ahead and ramble about that for a little bit. And then after that, in most of these big live streams that we do, whenever I'm involved, you guys have a ton of questions for me, which is always really, really awesome. I really enjoy the Q&A, and I think it's really great since a lot of you guys out there are guitar players, to kind of get that discourse going, the dialogue going about sort of bass versus guitar, kind of what translates between the two, how guitar players can better understand bass players, all that kind of stuff. So that we'll be doing a lot of Q&A here in a minute. So definitely as we're going through all this, the lesson and talking about the sale and stuff, we'll do a ton of Q&A as well. So it looks like Mr. Jason wants to jump in here, yes?
Yeah, it's looking like pretty much 50-50 on slap bass versus soloing and phrasing.
Okay.
So for me, I'm going to make the decision for everybody.
All
Since
right.
you kind of did soloing and phrasing on the last one, let's do slap bass today.
Do some slap. Okay.
And just
Sounds like a plan.
before we get into it, contest, the deal with that, you just have to meaningfully participate in the chat. So ask some questions, answer some questions. If you have anything to add to the discussion, all of that is meaningful.
Yep.
We will write down your names, and you will be entered into the hat where we will draw it randomly. You do have to be here to accept it. So when we draw the name, we'll let everybody know, and we try to give a little bit of time so everybody can get kind of caught up on their feed, and then we'll announce it, and you'll have 2 minutes. If you are not here in that 2 minutes, it will be going to an alternate that we choose as well. So that's how that works, no exceptions. And then the guitars and bass can go to Canada, US, and Mexico. If you're asking that, well, what if I pay shipping? If you reasonably think that you can afford shipping, you're going to be better off just going to the guitar store today and buying a new guitar for yourself. It is very expensive to do so, and so we don't. But if you are outside of the North America area and you win, we will send you a $100 gift card that you can kind of use on anything, but we would hope that you would use it for musical purposes. Anyway, without ado, we will get to Alex and some slap bass.
Indeed, sounds like a plan. Well, cool. So, slapping, like I said a moment ago, very, very popular technique, but oftentimes a seldom understood technique, especially by non-bass players or guys who don't have a ton of experience on bass. So what I think we can go ahead and do here is I'm just going to play a little bit for a couple of minutes. I'm going to do some cool slap stuff. You guys can kind of watch. We'll switch some camera angles around and stuff so you guys can kind of see what I'm doing, and then I'm going to go through and give you just the basics of the techniques. a couple of really simple exercises that you guys can do to get slapping. And keep in mind for the guitar players out there, it's not the fingerings and some of the rhythms and stuff that I'm doing. Slapping is much more the right hand technique. So you guys can take some of these ideas, hopefully, and maybe, try to apply them to your guitar playing and see how that works. But let me just go ahead and play here a little bit for you guys, and then we will get into talking a little bit more about it. So there you go. A little bit of crazy slapping for you guys. So really the basis of this whole technique, again, like I said, it's very much a right hand thing. What your left hand is doing is really important as well. But the whole basis for it is obviously, as I'm sure you guys could see, it's mostly your thumb and your index finger is really what's going on in the right hand. And so we kind of break it down into two motions. We have the actual slap, and then we have the pop. Okay? Now, for guitar players, something that I've always thought is very, very similar in the guitar world is sort of finger style playing when you're doing stuff without a pick on a guitar. And it's a very similar motion where you might, you're using your thumb and maybe your index and your middle finger. That kind of a thing on guitar. Right? Or we're plucking with our thumb and then we're sort of alternating and using these two fingers. It's a similar technique, but instead of plucking with our thumb, right? What we're actually doing is we're taking our thumb, we're approaching the string, and for a split second, you sort of relax your thumb. And I always try to think of the string like a trampoline. And the whole idea is to strike with this part of your thumb, okay? So sort of the side of the knuckle of your thumb. And again, thinking of the string as a trampoline, you just strike the string and you bounce off. And what gives it that cool slap sound is that you're actually, instead of, when we're playing fingerstyle or if you're playing with a pick, we're attacking the string sort of from a horizontal perspective, right? We're pulling the string over and then releasing it, and it's vibrating this way. When we're slapping, and we hit the string like that, we're actually forcing it to vibrate in and out, sort of towards and away from the body of the instrument. And that causes, on the first sort of movement of the string, it actually strikes the frets, okay? It strikes that top fret, that 21st fret. And that's what gives it that really cool, super attacky kind of metallic sound. Same thing with the pop. So the pop, again, you can think of it like sort of a fingerstyle approach. You're sort of increasing your angle of attack a little bit more. So you're almost treating your index finger like a hook. Okay? And again, you're kind of getting underneath the string a little bit just with the tip of your finger, pulling the string away from the body physically, and then releasing it. And it's causing the same thing to happen. The string moves down and it strikes that fret, and you get that real nice, really bright kind of attack sound. So that's kind of where the sound is coming from, and that's really the basis of the two techniques. So again, on the slap, we're thinking of the string like a trampoline. We're kind of attacking the string with the side of our thumb, the side of the knuckle, that real firm part of the side of your thumb there. Right? And then we're combining that with this plucking motion. So really great exercise just to start off with is to not even worry about our left hand. Our left hand's going to go away. And, again, not worrying about strings ringing out or anything. This is just purely a right hand kind of technique thing. You can start, it's kind of easiest, or was easiest for me to start with your E string on the slap and then your G string on the pop. And you can literally just sit here. And sort of do that over and over and over again and really get used to. Or you can practice muting the strings as well with your left hand. And that'll kind of get your hands into getting used to that motion. And then, of course, you can switch up the strings to A string and G string, A string and D string, E and A. Practice pops all across the strings, and practice slaps all across the strings. So that's kind of the basis of slap technique for the right hand. Now, incorporating the left hand can be a little bit different than our normal playing, because slapping oftentimes to provide that really rhythmic effect. When you guys saw me doing a lot of that kind of stuff, again, very, very rhythmic, very kind of attacky, very choppy, I guess you could say. But it's a lot of hammer-ons and sometimes some pull-offs, but mainly it's hammer-ons. And so you can do real simple stuff like that to practice hammer-ons with your left hand. So, say 7th fret A string here, right? We can just sort of slap our open A, and then hammer that 7th fret. Slap it open again, hammer the 6th fret. Same thing on the E string. Right? So again, a couple really, really simple things. You can then incorporate all three in this really, really easy lick that I like to use, which is sort of like a triplet figure. You can think of it as, just a figure of 3 notes. And again, we'll start on our A string, open, hammer 7th fret, and then we're going to fret with our pinky over on the 9th fret on the G string, and we're going to pop that note. Okay, so slap open, hammer, pop. Really simple, easy motion. And then you move it around chromatically, let's say, just fret by fret. That's a really cool thing about slapping and why it can look sort of so snazzy and sound so cool. You can get a lot of notes in there. It can be a really kind of a cool, flashy trick to use. But it's all based in, like, once you learn or figure out these simple patterns, just like that, slap, hammer, pop, with, your octave going on there. That's 7th to 9th fret. And then, of course, you move that shape around on your neck, and it's always going to stay the same, obviously. So something like that, you start practicing it slow. Slap, hammer, pop, slap, hammer, pop, slap, hammer, pop. Take that simple motion, practice it, speed it up. Really, really cool, kind of simple slap trick. So, yeah, that's sort of slapping in a quick, 10-minute nutshell, however long that was. Really, really cool technique, really fun technique. We all love the sound of slap bass. You can do some really, really fun stuff with it. You can use it in a lot of different styles of music. I mean, it's, predominantly used, I would say, in funk, but you can definitely, Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers use slaps all the time. I've seen a lot of guys in hard rock and metal bands do it. Maybe not as much like country or something. You don't really see it there. But, yeah, anything funk, fusion, jazz, rock, hard rock, classic rock, even maybe some metal. Like a John Myung from Dream Theater, fantastic bass player. He slaps a ton on some really crazy sort of progressive metal stuff. So really useful technique, really versatile technique. And if you're a bass player and you're kind of looking to add to your bag of tricks, looking to add something a little bit flashy, something you can kind of step out and be like, hey, check this out. Slapping is a great way to go. So yeah, there's a quick little thing on slapping for you guys. Yeah, I think maybe, do we have some questions rolling in here?
We have more than some.
Yeah, we've got quite a few.
More than some. Okay, see, this happens every time. I'm like, I know you guys want to talk about stuff, so I like to leave a lot of time for us to do the Q&A thing. So,
Okay.
Yeah, hit me with some questions.
All right, here we go. Hey, from Melinda, I've never played bass. How different is it from guitar?
Well, hello, Melinda. Bass and guitar are actually really not all that different. They are tuned very, very similarly. So the 4 strings of a normal 4-string bass are actually the 4 lowest strings in pitch on your guitar. E, A, D, G. Just on a guitar, you would add then another higher B string and then a second E string, the highest string, right? So the other thing about bass is that these are tuned 1 full octave, okay, beneath where a guitar is. So if I play up here on my 12th fret, right, that's the pitch of the 4 lowest strings on the guitar. Okay, so we're just taking those notes and now they're an octave down. So the big crossover, obviously that being the case between bass and guitar, is the fretting, at least on those 4 strings on the guitar. So if you know your sort of simple major scales, minor scales, pentatonic scales, that kind of thing, on guitar, anything you can play on those 4 strings, those strings that are lowest in pitch on the guitar, will be able to translate over no problem. It's exactly the same fretting positions, the same patterns, all that kind of stuff. So that's a huge advantage right there. The biggest difference between the two is, the guitar obviously is much higher in pitch, but also, guitars, you can do big bar chords and stuff. Chords on bass are a bit more advanced because the strings are bigger, the neck is longer, a little bit, and the strings are sort of spaced further apart. You can certainly play chords on bass, but it's not something that we do typically as bass players. We're usually focused on just playing 1 note. So that actually makes the transition between the two pretty easy, especially if you've got a good knowledge of different chord shapes and you know a little bit about, okay, well, this is like a G chord and I know that the root note is G, or this is an E major chord and I know that the root note is E. And if you know where those notes are, again, on those strings lowest in pitch on the guitar, you can translate that to bass. As you can say, okay, well, the band or the guitar player or what have you is playing a G chord. I know on guitar my G chord is shaped like this, so I'm just going to take the root note, right, the G chord, and there's my G. And so you can then jump in on sort of following around a G chord. Now we're going to a C chord, D chord, or play your open string. So yeah, if you have a decent knowledge of chord shapes on the guitar, it makes it really, really easy to translate that over. So Not terribly different. Bigger, longer, strings are bigger, and it's an octave down, but it's tuned the same, so all your fretting patterns are going to be the same. And again, if you have that chord knowledge, it makes it pretty easy to start transitioning over. So thank you very much for tuning in, Melinda. Appreciate it.
Okay, from MU Tiger, are guitar amps and bass amps different?
Indeed. Greetings, MU Tiger. Yes, they are quite different, actually. You can definitely plug a guitar into a bass amp, but you shouldn't, I mean, you can physically, it will work, but you should not plug a bass into a guitar amp. It has to do with the designs of the speakers, really. Again, because guitars are tuned an octave higher than bass, and you can go all the way up to your top frets on your E string, guitar amps are designed to produce those high frequencies. They're not designed to make super, super low frequencies. So the physical design of the speakers is a lot different. And again, running a guitar into a bass amp is totally fine because bass amps can kind of do the full spectrum. They're not going to be damaged by that. They're very robust. They require a lot more power, bass amps do. But a guitar amp, again, because it's mainly designed to accentuate those mid-range and those higher frequencies to really make the guitar sing, if you plug a bass in and crank it up, you can actually damage the speakers. You can tear the surrounds, the linings around the speaker cones, and yeah, not going to have a good time. If it's at a very low volume, maybe you're just in your buddy's living room or something, it's safe. You just want to keep the volume down very, very low if you're plugging a bass into a guitar amp. You do not want to crank it up because you can definitely damage the speakers. And also, the power difference has to do a lot with the physics of sound. Low frequencies, because they're a much longer wavelength than high frequencies, which are a much shorter wavelength, they require a lot more electrical power for a speaker to push out, because the speaker has to move back and forth very slowly with a lot of force behind it to really propagate those low frequency waves. Whereas very, very high frequencies, so short, such fast vibrations, require a little bit less electrical power to project out into a room. So it's another big difference is you'll see bass watts at 600, 1,000, 1,500 watts, whereas a guitar amp you might only see 50 or 100 watts, even for like a big full stack might only be 150 watts, as opposed to a small bass amp again might be 600 or 700, even upwards of 1,000 watts. So it has to do with a little bit with the physics as well, but yeah, that's a longish answer I suppose. But thanks again, Emu. Appreciate it.
From Craig Young, are there good exercises for keeping your wrist and hand from cramping like crazy?
Indeed. Greetings, Craig. Yes, absolutely. And I wouldn't even as much say that there's like specific exercises to do. You want to keep in mind that the most important thing for our technique is to keep, whether on guitar or on bass, is to make sure that our hands are as relaxed as possible while we're playing. And I know that might seem a little bit counterintuitive because obviously we're having to move and sort of squeeze the strings to fret them and, move our hands around, hold the pick and all this stuff. So they can't be totally slack. But as we're playing, we just want to make sure that we're playing as efficiently as possible, okay? And that's, honestly, it varies a lot from person to person because everybody's hands are different, everybody's arms are different, just, on a kind of a genetic level. I have very big wrists and slightly shorter fingers for my size. A guy might, I'm 6 foot. Another guy who's 6 foot might have incredibly skinny wrists and incredibly long fingers. So it kind of is based on your physiology, but you just generally, no matter what you're playing, you want to make sure that you start playing it at a slow tempo. Let's say you're learning a new song, right? Which is just strumming some chords, for instance. You want to make sure to start really slow and make sure that each time you're fretting, it's nice and clean and you can hear all the notes evenly and it's not buzzing, but that your hand is in sort of just an optimal position and is not tensed or cramped or anything like that. If you find your hands getting like that, just stop, take your hands away from your instrument, let them relax, and then come back and kind of go again. And just always, again, keeping in mind that everything is as comfortable as it can be. And it might take some finagling. Some guys like their elbow out a little bit further. Some guys like it a little bit closer. Some guys like their thumb a little lower on the back of the neck versus higher or over the top. Some people's fingers spread very easily, some do not. So it's kind of an ongoing journey of kind of understanding your own body, your own physiology, and how your hands want to play the instrument. Again, always keeping in mind, it's important to have good, clean notes and sound good, and be using the right hand shapes and stuff. But within there, even just within that a basic G chord shape, there's a lot of different angles that you can approach it at. Or on the bass, a simple scale. It's like I can be here with my elbow way down in. I could be out here. I could be a little bit flatter like this. So it's just kind of playing around with your own hands and arms and stuff and figuring out what's comfortable for you. One particular exercise that I am thinking of that Chris Lipe, actually good buddy and JamPlay instructor, does is what he calls, and this is more, I guess, more for guitar players, but what he calls chord push-ups, which I thought was a really cool idea. And that's just basically coming up, fretting the chord, playing the chord, and then giving your hand a break, and really just practicing kind of the approach and really nailing the chord, playing it, getting used to it, and then giving your hand a break. So if that's kind of where you're at in your journey of learning, maybe doing chords or other simple guitar stuff, you could try something like that, kind of start from a resting position, hands off the instrument, come on, fret, play the chord, and then come off, give your hands a second to relax, and just kind of do that over and over again until that motion feels really comfortable and your hand isn't cramping or hurting or anything. So a few ideas there for you, and I wish you the best of luck.
Okay, from Jonathan, how do I make my hammer-ons as loud as my slaps and pops?
Greetings, Jonathan. Excellent question. Time, patience, and practice. Because what you have to do is build up enough muscle strength in that left hand. It does take a fair amount of force to really drive that string into the fretboard, and that unfortunately is just one of those things that's just going to take a little bit of time and a little bit of practice. What I would recommend for that personally is actually getting those grip trainers that they sell at Guitar Center, and I think they sell them at office places too. But it's just basically a little thing that you can hold, and it's got sort of little keys for each finger with springs behind it for strength training and sort of resistance training. Grab one of those. That's a really great thing to do, but it's really just kind of sitting there and building up the finger strength in your left hand to be able to see, even I can't do it perfect. Just building up that left hand strength to be able to really attack the string and get those notes to sound nice and clean. That is sadly one where there isn't quite a shortcut. It's just it's building up that strength over time. So yeah, sorry, but good luck.
From Bill Strub, why is Leo Fender considered the father of bass and not Paul Tutmark? Sorry about the pronunciation on that.
That is an excellent question. I'm actually not familiar with Paul Tutmark. I will have to Google that. From my understanding, and I very well could be wrong. You might know a little more than me here in this regard. But my understanding was that Leo Fender was sort of the first guy to put this arrangement of things together. A single coil pickup, volume, tone knob, 4-string bass with frets, the Fender Precision bass, and I believe it was 1951. Again, from what I know, he arrived at that conclusion just based on seeing, kind of the rise in amplified music, the rising prominence of the guitar as a lead instrument, full drum sets coming into play, early kind of boogie-woogie and rockabilly stuff that would eventually lead to rock and roll music. He saw a need for an amplified bass instrument, and he sort of melded his electric guitar designs and Les Paul's designs, and then kind of took the upright bass and said, okay, well, it needs to have a longer scale, and obviously only 4 strings, and this is what they're tuned to. And then pickup, designed a new sort of pickup winding pattern to better work with bass frequencies. So that is my understanding of it. I am not a historian exactly, so I would encourage everybody out there, Google this Paul Tutmark guy. I definitely will when I get home. And maybe he came up with something a little bit earlier than Leo did. Very, very possible. It happens all the time in engineering. So Excellent question, Bill. And yeah, I wish I had more info on it for you. But yeah, everybody out there, go Google. Google is your friend. And let's learn. I definitely will. So thank you.
Okay, from Ricky, I haven't been playing bass very long. I noticed some players use their fingers on their right hand and some, like McCartney, use a pick. Is there a big difference or does it not matter?
Excellent question, Ricky. I'm trying to think of how to best answer that, if it matters or not. It's really just a thing of personal preference and of tone, because they do sound quite different. And I can. Is there a pick over there, Chad? Does anybody? Yeah, if we could find a pick around here, I can demonstrate. But basically, just it has to do with the sound and the timbre of the instrument. You know, playing with a pick is going to involve a lot more attack, kind of a lot more punch on the front end of each note, whereas playing with your fingers is a much rounder kind of a sound. Excellent. We got a pick.
Thick one and a big one.
I like thick one. Sounds good. So yeah, finger style. Right? Then with a pick, yeah, come here. I'm very bad with picks. I don't play with one very often. So you can hear the difference. Come here. So yeah, it's really just a thing of personal preference, whichever is more comfortable for you. And then also the sound will definitely be a lot different. You have that strong picked attack when you're using a pick as opposed to the bit, warmer, rounder thing. And then also what kind of music are you playing? I would say that guys who do rock, classic rock, hard rock, punk, metal, generally just harder, louder styles of music, you will see more guys playing with a pick. Softer styles of music like jazz, for instance, almost no bass players ever play with a pick. Because it just doesn't quite fit in right, and you can't get, some of the articulation stuff that you can do finger style. That more intricate, jazzy, fusion-y kind of stuff is a little bit more difficult to do with a pick, just because of kind of the nature of it and getting around between all those strings really quickly. It certainly can be done and played that way, but you pretty seldom see bass players in jazz or fusion or so I guess sometimes in funk. But yeah, those lighter styles of music, more intricate styles, picks are generally a little bit less common. And also just the sound doesn't quite fit as well because you have all that, really attack and dun sound with the pick. Doesn't quite fit in as well in those lighter styles of music. But, if you're going more towards the harder stuff, absolutely go for a pick. Yeah. So personal preference, I would say.
Okay.
Great question, though. Thank you.
From Mike here, when I slap, I have problems with hitting other strings than the one I'm playing on, usually on the A, D, and G. Is there some kind of specific thumb position I should have?
Sure, definitely. Excellent question, Mike. So that's a very, very common issue when you're sort of just getting started out slapping or just sort of getting used to the technique, is accuracy. And it's taken me many, many years to be able to really up. See, I even missed it the first time. To be able to really be able to individually hit each of those strings, it does take a fair amount of practice. And as far as your thumb position goes, I have seen guys really approach it in a lot of different ways. I personally go with a sort of a parallel approach. I like my thumb being parallel to the string because it sets my pop up really nicely. And it sort of, it helps with that accuracy. It helps with sort of picking out the string that you want to slap. And yeah. But again, my thumb is sort of very flat on the side, as you guys can see. I know, guys with maybe skinnier fingers might have more of a rounded knuckle. So like Les Claypool of Primus, for example, actually slaps like this, where his thumb is almost perpendicular to the string and pointing straight up. And then he uses like the side of his... the side of his index finger to do the pops. Now that's very weird for me because again, my comfort level is there. I've seen guys do a little bit more down. Because you can get your index finger closer to your thumb. Then maybe here your index finger is a little bit further away. So it's really, anywhere, and I've seen guys anywhere in between, like Marcus Miller, I think does a little bit, he's a little bit up. Vic Wooten does his whole double thumb thing. So there's a ton of different ways that you can approach it. And again, it really just gets back into your sort of body, your hands, your physiology, and what is most comfortable. And that just takes experimentation and time and really, as you're playing, paying attention to where the problems are, and you just look at it logically, look at it like a physics problem and be like, okay, well, when I'm striking, maybe we're like this, and it's like, well, it's really hard for me to single out that E string. Make an adjustment this direction and see how that works for you. Or, if that's not comfortable, maybe go more in the other direction. Try different parts on the side of your thumb. Maybe you want to get a little bit further down into the meat of your thumb there, as opposed to maybe you want to get more down towards the tip of your thumb. So it's really just experimentation and figuring out what's easiest for you and what's most comfortable for you. And then the other half of the equation is, of course, your left hand and being able to mute those strings. I do it like that. Other guys will do it a million different ways, but just paying attention to your left hand and making sure that your left hand is muting the strings that you're not trying to attack. Takes a lot of practice, but stick with it, and I promise you will be satisfied. So, great question, though. Thank you.
Okay, here's a question from Dave Faze. For beginners, do you suggest flat wound or round wound strings? And there's been a lot of questions just regarding flat wound in general. So
flat versus round, absolutely. So excellent question, Dave. It is not something as much as I would recommend beginners versus advanced. It comes back to the sound that you're looking to make with your instrument and the style of music that you're looking to play. So for those of you who don't know the difference, round wound strings, which are what we have here in this bass, they take a steel wire core, or they use a number of different materials, but it's a straight wire core, and then they will wrap a round wire around it. And so you get all those nice ridges, just like you would see on a normal guitar string. You get those the ridges, and that gives you a very, very bright sound. There's a lot of surface area because if you look at the string under a microscope, it's sort of doing this kind of a thing. There's all that surface area, and so it can propagate higher frequencies a little bit better. So you get a very bright tone. Flat wound strings, on the other hand, they take the same wire core, but then they actually take a ribbon, a very thin ribbon, and wrap it around so that it's very flat and smooth, and there's no ridges or ruffles or whatever. And that gives you a very sort of rolled off sound, not very much brightness, not very much treble, mostly just the bass frequencies. And it would sound, if I turn the tone knob down here and roll off all those high frequencies, it's a good approximation of what flat wounds sound like. Not exactly, but that versus, you guys can hear the difference. There's that brightness and sort of that grittiness to the top end of the sound, as opposed to. So that's going to kind of be the difference that you see between the two. And again, they're both equally as easy to play. One isn't more difficult than the other. Flat wounds can tend to get a little bit more dirty than round wounds, just because the flatness of everything. Yeah, but it's really dependent on the style that you're thinking about doing. I would recommend flat wounds for anything where you're going for kind of a vintage sound. So like if you're doing R&B, Motown, blues, old school country, classic rock, that kind of stuff. Flat wounds might be a good choice. If you're doing a lot of slap, I would definitely never do flat wounds. Or if you're playing brighter, more aggressive styles of music, modern rock, hard rock, funk, arguably, metal, where you want all, that full frequency, that full frequency sound with a lot of grit and a lot of brightness and a lot of presence in the high frequencies, I would go round wound for sure. Most basses that you buy just out of the store come with round wound strings. Round wound strings are much more common and generally cheaper than flat wound strings are. So yeah, more of a genre thing and the kind of sound that you're going for as opposed to beginner or advanced. So yeah, hopefully that helps. Thanks, guys.
Okay, we're going to take a quick break from our questions to do another giveaway. So I'm going to hand it over to Jason.
Indeed.
All right. It's time to take away Alex's bass that he's playing. So actually, Chris Lipe, if you're listening, you might want to actually go get Alex's actual bass. Or I guess it doesn't really matter. You're going to play this till the end. Anyway,
Absolutely. I love this thing.
It's time to give away this bass here. We'll give you just a couple seconds here. If you're seeing this, I've posted in the chat. If you're finding that your chat is quite a bit behind live, if you just refresh it every once in a while, it'll actually get you closer to live there. But we're going to go ahead and give away this bass here, and I'm going to ask everybody in the chat to please quiet down. That way we can actually put this in the chat room so the winner can see it, and then we will announce it live as well. All right, so is everybody ready? I think we're ready. Congratulations, McKenna. McKenna, you are the winner of the Squier bass guitar. You have 2 minutes to respond. 2 minutes from now. I'm watching the time. McKenna, please respond in the chat that you are here and where you are from. So we, again, are looking for McKenna.
Well, congratulations, McKenna. This is a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous bass.
I've seen this person posting, so they should be here. McKenna, are you here? Yes.
Yes.
McKenna says,
Lovely.
yes, thank you. I'm from Hollywood, Maryland. Excellent.
Beautiful.
McKenna,
Wonderful.
awesome. Please email your name and your shipping address to support@jamplay.com, and please also include your phone number, as the tracking companies need that. So McKenna, once again, please do mail us at support@jamplay.com with your full name and shipping address and phone number. And with that, we will get back to some questions for Alex.
Indeed, yeah, no worries. And just real quick, congratulations. Fantastic bass. That's why I've been playing it the whole time. Actually, in its price range, this is arguably one of my favorite basses to recommend to beginners and pros alike. I actually know a number of guys. This is the Squier, the vintage modified jazz bass by Squier. And I know a number of guys who actually keep these around for touring and stuff like that because they're really fantastic instruments. And this one plays great. So congratulations. Thanks so much for tuning in, McKenna. Hope you dig it.
Okay, from Gerald Landry, do you ever use a capo?
Great question, Gerald. Not particularly. Bass players really do not use capos because the approach or the idea that you're going after usually when you're using a capo is the ability to play those open chord positions, right? So, for example, if I want to play a song in B flat major, I could, do all bar chords on a guitar and it would be kind of a painful experience. But if I just capo at the 3rd fret, then I can play a B flat with a G shape, right? And have all those nice open strings to take advantage of. Whereas on the bass, I'm actually almost never playing open strings with the exception of slapping. As I was doing earlier, you can play a lot of open strings. But when I'm just playing bass normally, I'm very, very rarely playing an A here. Like all open A string stuff. I'm almost always closed position fretting. Always fretting almost every single note. I pretty rarely use open strings when I'm playing normally. Again, if I'm doing, solo-y stuff or chordy stuff or slapping, that kind, flashier stuff like that, you can definitely use the open strings. They're great to have around. But Bass, you're always fretting. You're constantly fretting everything, and it sounds better, to be honest with you. The open strings have, I mean, you can just hear the difference. There's our open A. There's our fretted A. You can hear how much lower and sort of growlier and more bass frequencies and more low end that fretted A has versus the open A. So I'm always fretting, and so a capo almost kind of has no purpose anymore, because when you're fretting everything, if you capo at the second fret, it's just, you're still fretting everything, so it doesn't really change a whole lot. You could use a capo on bass. I've tried it before to do different, again, if you're trying to do that kind of stuff, you could capo, and you could probably find some interesting things to do with it. There's certainly no rules against it. But yeah, just not something that we typically do, again, just for that reason of we don't really play a ton of chords. So, yeah. Short answer on capos for you.
Okay, from Chuck Hurst, can you give a basic explanation of passive versus active pickups?
Absolutely, Chuck. That's an awesome question. So, and it's actually pretty simple. Passive pickups are called passive because they involve no, there is not what we call a preamp, okay? So a preamp, which is short for preamplifier, is basically just a little electrical circuit that makes something louder. It's sort of a volume knob before your volume knob. So in a bass with passive electronics, there is no preamp. There's just our two pickups, which are magnets, basically, and those are wired in, and the volume knob actually isn't turning you up. It's a funny little mental thing. It's taking just a flatline signal that's coming out and turning it down. So it's kind of starting at 1, and then you can roll it back down to 0, as opposed to starting at 0 and then like making it louder. It's just the sound that's coming out is coming out, and then you're attenuating that. You're turning it down from there. Okay, so that's passive, and the big importance for the end user is that there's no battery in a passive pickup system. So like with this one, again, it's just two magnets, and those go in here, and you can turn the sound down, and then it goes out to your amp. And it's pretty much as simple as that. When you bring in the active pickups, same idea. You're going from two magnets, but then it's going into a powered system. So you actually have a battery inside the instrument, and that's giving it some extra oomph. That's actually providing power to make the sound louder. So you're no longer just kind of letting the sound pass through and then turning it down if you want. You can do things like have an actual equalizer and boost and cut at certain frequencies, turn down or turn up and turn down at treble, middle, bass frequencies, just like you can on your stereo on your TV. So yeah, that's really all there is to it. Is that an active pickups require a battery. They're going to be louder and have usually more options as far as it's got EQ and all this kind of stuff. Whereas a passive bass is going to be a little bit quieter, and you generally are only going to have volume and then tone knobs. And tone knob is a bit of a different thing, but I can explain that later. but yeah, that's basically all you need to know is active, battery, louder, passive, no battery, a little bit quieter, and usually fewer options as far as the knobs go. So hopefully that helps.
All right. We probably have time for 2 more questions maybe.
Okay. No
Jeremiah
worries.
Lynch, what should be my first pedal for a bass?
Pedals, yes. Greetings, Jeremiah. Thank you for tuning in. I personally do not own any pedals. Well, I take that back. I own one pedal, and it's a loop pedal, and that's really it. If you want to get into the world of pedals, you certainly can. Bass players sort of do not use pedals as commonly as guitar players do. And it's very much a stylistic, a kind of a genre-based thing, again, like so much of this stuff is. If you're playing exclusively like punk or hard rock or metal or something, you could get a fuzz or an overdrive pedal. And always definitely go for ones that are specifically geared towards bass. Guitar pedals on a bass have notorious instances of not really doing really well with those super low frequencies that basses make. So yeah, I mean, I would just say if you're just looking for a pedal, I love loop pedals because they make practicing really, really easy. You can sort of, play a bass line or some little chordy things and then practice over that. They're a lot of fun. But as far as actual effects pedals, I would just say, think about what kind of stuff are you really trying to play. If you're trying to play, again, punk, hard rock, heavy metal, you could look into distortion stuff, overdrive pedals, tube screamers, fuzz pedals, that kind of a thing. If you're more into classic rock and kind of psychedelic stuff, you could go for a phaser or a flanger or maybe even a delay pedal. If you're doing maybe more acoustic stuff, like singer-songwriter type stuff, you could go with a reverb pedal. But in general, just in my experience, gigging and all that kind of stuff, pedals they have a very hard time sitting in like a band. If you're playing with, a drummer and a guitar player and you're trying to use a ton of pedals, it kind of, no matter, even if they're really nice pedals and they're designed for bass, they always kind of have this tendency, at least for me, to rob some of the low end. It just takes away some of the big oomph of the bass. One main exception to that is the Boss OC2 octave pedal. That thing can sound really, really, really cool. So that's another good one to look into because it's actually designed to go an octave down and really make a bunch of really low subby stuff happen. So that's kind of cool. But not at all saying stay away from pedals. I've personally, every time I've tried to use them, I've always been, again, regardless of brand or anything, I've always been, but it's taking away from the bass, the low end. Our job is to provide that low fundamental in a group. And, when you start to kind of mess with that and you start to throw effects on it and stuff, sometimes it can kind of, the whole point of the bass can kind of get lost in the fray. But again, if it's the kind of thing you're into, absolutely go for it. I would just kind of take the genres that you're looking at playing or the kind of stuff that you enjoy playing and go from there. So hopefully that helps a little bit. But awesome question, though. Thank you.
All right. I think if you want to just do a quick wrap up, we probably should.
Okay.
We could transition to our next instructor.
Yeah, absolutely. No worries. Well, yeah, thank you guys so much again for tuning in. We've got guys coming in all day for you, so it's going to continue to be a great time. We've got a bunch more stuff to give away. And, of course, we've got the awesome sale going on. I think it's $109.95, right, for a full-year membership, which is a killer deal. And with that, you, of course, get the track packs, one of which I made, the play-along tracks, which I'm really, really excited about. It's called Flavors of Funk. So it's 20 different short little funk tunes, specifically geared for practicing soloing, practicing lead playing, practicing grooving, for bass or guitar. And it actually features a couple of my really good friends, Eric Luba on keyboards and George Horn on drums, from up-and-coming Denver funk act Analog Sun. So that was a ton of fun to make. I hope you guys dig it. Again, that $109.95 deal, get in on that. Gets you the whole year of access to that incredible site. We've got 5,000-6,000 lessons, I think, at this point. A couple hundred different instructors. It's such an incredible package you guys are getting. So, thank you guys so very, very much again for tuning in, and we will turn it over to the next instructor. We will see you around. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex.